Okay, great. Just a couple of ground rules. I think Brian already said this, make sure your phones are silenced. This is not a debate. We do encourage you guys to interact with one another if you want to respond to something specific, but we ask that you try your best not to interrupt one another, just be respectful. We may have we may have more questions for one candidate than the other. That's just sort of how it goes. And then I think that's it. So we will start, I should introduce it. Okay, so this is House District 37 endorsement interview, Democratic side. We'll start with just 1 to 2 minute introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running. Brian, we'll start with you.
Okay, my name is Brian McGuire. I grew up in the district. I went to grade school through high school there. My mom still lives in the house that we built when we moved there in 1977. My parents originally came back to Oregon in 1962. I live in the district with my wife. Her family's been in Oregon since the 1930s. The O'Neill transfer, you've probably seen. Yeah. And we have 2 kids. One of them, Megan, she goes to the University of Utah, and then Colin's a junior at Wilsonville High School. And
what do you do for work?
I'm the CEO of a high-tech company, so Net2Vault, and we do cloud-based backup and disaster recovery. It was a technology I invented before cloud even actually became something. And what we do is we replicate data from big corporations. I don't name my customers, but I probably have some of your data. And I founded that company and I own it. And I'm the CEO of it. So
how many employees do you have?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, it's 12.
Okay. Yeah. And annual revenue?
5-ish.
Okay, 5 million. Okay, not $5. No, just kidding. What sort of civic involvement have you had? Whether it's government advisory bodies, sounds like you've been on the board of a couple things. Tell me about your civic involvement.
My civic involvement actually started really early on. I was really active early in the crafting of the Northwest Forest Plan under Clinton. As growing up in the Northwest and being a hunter and fisherman, I really just got disturbed at the level of logging that was happening. And we'd go year after year and find a new place that we'd been that was just devastated. And so I'd get involved with the Forest Service, I'd get involved, it was kind of rookie-ish, if you will, writing letters and doing that kind of thing. And then I found ONRC at the time, was Oregon Wild. And so from that, we actually got involved, and I went all the way up and actually testified in front of the U.S. Senate on behalf of the Mount Hood Wilderness Bill. I got 16,000 acres added to the Mount Hood Wilderness Bills. And I can take credit for all of those because I reached out to a guy by the name of Larry Soa, who was Clackamas County Chair.
And why are you running?
Why am I running? I'm running because I'm really afraid we're going to see 2000 again.
You're going to see what?
The year 2000 again.
Okay.
I was working on the Gore campaign, and it was just as a canvasser going to houses and stuff like that. And then Diane Lynn brought up gay marriage, and who's against gay marriage? No one is, right? But she brought it up, and we lost that election by 200 votes in Florida. And if she hadn't brought up the gay marriage thing then, Bush wouldn't have been elected. And I see that happening right now. And we're going to end up with a Donald Trump presidency. And I'm a little bit right of progressives. I am. I'm a hunter. But that's one of the reasons. The other one is the tolls. I was the first person to actually put my own money up. And I put a lot of money up to thwart tolls. And obviously the governor is kind of put it on hold, but ODOT's still moving forward with this. And that is a horribly regressive tax. And I can afford it, but my mom can't. And a lot of people can't. And it's going to end up being this black hole like the lottery. The lottery was supposed to be for schools. The marijuana tax was supposed to be for schools. Almost none of that money goes there now. The same thing is going to happen with the tolls. They're just never going to give it up. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen. And another thing locally for us is the Stafford area. There's talk about the urban growth boundary changing. and then developing that and putting as many as 6,000 homes. I fought for a long time to preserve, our protections of farmland and scenic rivers and all sorts of things like that. And I just don't want to see us, Westland and Tualatin turn into Beaverton. I just don't want to see that.
And Representative Walters, can you tell us a little bit about why you're running and a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Jules Walters. I'm currently the state representative for House District 37. Before that, I served as a city councilor in Westland and as the mayor of Westland. I have 4 kids. I'm married. We live in Westland, obviously. I think I've always been taught when I was raised that it's really important to be involved civically, whether it's politically or even just in your community. So along with my mom, I marched for the Equal Rights Amendment and a lot of environmental causes, no nukes and save the whales and all of those. I'm just aging myself now.
I'm right there with you.
Okay, good.
58.
Okay, good. But I think once I had kids, I realized how important it all is. It made more sense to me. So, Girl Scout leader, softball, association, just got really involved in all of these things that the kids were participating in. And so when I moved to Westland, I continued that as my kids grew and just realized at the time, and this sounds, it's sometimes the smallest thing that gets you involved in local government, but the girls' softball fields were in terrible condition and the boys' baseball fields were in great condition. So I just felt like there needed to be some more parity. Went to the Parks Board. They put the project on the bond that they were running for park improvements, and now we have equal amenities in both softball and baseball, which was great. And just that turned into running for city council. In that time, in the space between while I was running for city council was when Commissioner Paul Savas came to us and said, hey, I was just up at downtown, they're gonna toll the ODOT says they're gonna toll the Abernathy Bridge. And we were like, really? And he said, yeah. And I said to them, how does West Lynn feel about that? And ODOT said, where's West Lynn?
No.
Yeah, according to Commissioner Savas. So it was at that moment, over 6 years ago now, I started going up there and testifying for the community. And it's been a part of being against this tolling plan. It's just been part of my everyday life almost for the last 6 years. So it was really a priority of mine when I went to the legislature to make sure that it didn't happen, and even if we couldn't stop it completely, that it was a much more equitable plan than it was. I was thrilled when we were able to pull some levers and the governor heard us and put a pause on tolling, and right now it's shelved. So
Are you still against tolling?
I am. I'm not, I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, I've lived in Los Angeles, so I'm used to paying tolls, but this tolling plan is not. It's so flawed. The administrative costs of running it are over 50%. So you're just throwing money out of your wallet, into another state, which is where the administration happens. We don't have a company in Oregon that manages tolling, so that money would be going out of state. So it's just, and there's no gain share, so none of the money goes back to the county or the city like the gas tax does, which is how cities and counties maintain their own infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. Also, there was no low-income toll. It's been talked about. They still haven't decided on it. And there was no. We asked for. Some sort of cap on what local residents have to pay. Because I don't know if you've been to West Lynn, but I-205 actually bisects it. So in many ways, that piece of the highway at the Abernathy Bridge is like a local road to us. So I take my dad to the hospital for treatments, to take the kids back in the day to dance and all these other things by using the I-205. And so it's really an inequitable toll on the residents.
Is Abernathy the one they're redoing?
Yes.
Right there, you see
That's
the
right.
big, okay.
Yeah.
It's a seismic retrofit.
Yeah. We kayaked under that on the way up to, whatever.
Oh, nice.
Could you give really quickly, no gain, what's gain share defined?
So gain share is the revenue collected by the gas tax is distributed. So it's 50% goes to the state, 30% goes to the county, and 20% goes to the local government. So that we can improve our roads with that little piece of the gas
But
tax.
there's no gain.
Tolling, there's no plan for.
Where's it
gain share.
go? All the
It's
tolls
all gonna go
where?
to ODOT. It's all gonna go to the state. Well, what's
to
left over
maintain.
50%
after.
is going to go out of state.
Yeah,
To what? To an administrator of the plan.
yeah.
Thank you.
What do each of you see as and just focus on one issue, what do you see as the top issue facing West Lynn right now? And we'll start with you.
Facing West Lynn right now. You know, I agree with Brian, the concern about the urban growth boundary. Housing, we're not doing great in the housing numbers, I'll be honest.
West Lynn specifically?
Westland specifically, we're more of a bedroom community with lots of single-family homes. We don't have a diverse stock of housing options. And I appreciate the governor and her goals for housing. I think they're really important. But in Westland, that would have to happen by opening the urban growth boundary, which was part of her bill. So I was one of only 2 representatives who voted against her housing bill.
Of 2 out of.
It was out of all of us in the House. So
Not just 2 Dems, but 2 overall.
2 overall.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, right,
because
right,
of
right.
the
Urban growth boundary expansion, yeah. And with that, I don't think that means we can't increase our housing stock or diversify it. I think we need to go up a little more than out, right? So we don't need to encroach into Stafford. We can, build more middle housing.
Middle housing, yeah. And the state law applies to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
House Bill 2001, yeah. So I think that's a better option for Westland, because I know it used to be a place where, people, I have friends like Brian who grew up there, and they moved out after high school or college, right, and moved to Portland or someplace else. But when it was time to have a family, they came back because it's a nice, good schools, a nice place, great parks, and my kids can't do that. My kids cannot afford to move to Westland now. So, although they're struggling to pay their rent here in Portland too. So, housing affordability is a big issue, and we need to tackle it.
Brian, what about you? What do you think is the top issue facing West Lynn?
I think the top issue is the tolling right now. Although there's a bunch of them. If there's one that I wanted to tackle that Jules and I haven't gone over, I would say it's the risk of, due to climate change, of catastrophic wildfires. Most of this district is hilled and heavily forested. When I was in college, my girlfriend, she was after college, she lived in Oakland, and she was from Oakland. That burnt down, and that wasn't even forested. You look at our district and you look at Pete's Mountain, and during 2020, during that just calamity, there was a fire. And I think that, and this is something that could actually even dovetail into Portland, because someday there might be a fire in Forest Park, and that would be horrible. It would be like the Gorge. And I'd like to see, a quick reaction force. I don't think it's something that a lot of people a quick reaction force where maybe we get together with Portland Fire, with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and have helicopters on site. I mean, one of the things I learned, in my advocacy for wildlands and wilderness was the need to mitigate some of that. And, I shudder to think, with climate change and getting 116 degrees in June, you wouldn't light up the entire hill.
So over the past decade, Oregon Capital Chronicle reported on this morning. You've given over $400,000 to Republican politicians, both in this state and federally, and to Republican PACs.
Yes.
Who have, Republicans in
Republican
general.
PACs?
I believe so. Well, Republican affiliated PACs. And many of them have routinely voted against environmental protections. So can you help us square that, your political giving,
Yeah, absolutely.
and your desire for environmental protection?
Yeah, so with backcountry hunters and anglers, so we're going to separate 2 different things, right? And there are 3 different things for me. One is, I run a business that employs families and stuff like that. 2, as a founder of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, so we advocate for wilderness and roadless. And, like Matt Rosendale in Montana, okay? So he's a Freedom Caucus guy, which is basically kind of crazy, right? But he's going to be the 2nd House rep in Montana. Now, if you want to get say, oil and gas leases. So like in Pinedale in Wyoming, when we were fighting those things, you have to get the other side. You can't. You have to get their buy-off. And this is like when we worked on the Mount Hood Wilderness Bill. I had Greg Walden literally shouting at me, after a Senate hearing. And sometimes you have to do things. So I have money and I use it in ways like a chess game. So I can actually pick up the phone. So that was for some of that.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
what you're
nationally.
saying, what you're saying is that you've donated to these Republicans because you think
So I can
giving
pick up
them
the
money will get you a direct line to them to convince them that how they're going about things is incorrect.
Yes.
Has it worked?
Yes.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
who are a couple politicians that you have talked to?
Matt Rosendale's
about,
one of them.
Okay, who else from the list you've given to?
So who else from the... Joni Ernst.
I think you donated to Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, I talked to him briefly once, and then he won't take a call anymore.
And do you think you moved, and we can get back to that question, but do you think Matt Rosendale and Joni Ernst moved on their stances?
Yeah.
And is there evidence in how they voted that they moved?
Well, we haven't had any wilderness bills actually put forth where it would make a difference yet. But so this is like planting a tree, right? You plant the tree and you don't go harvest it next week. You kind of have it in your back pocket. So, yeah, that's what it is.
Is it worth paying that price of admission, let's call it, to get access to these people, to give them resources to get elected and overturn or block legislation that you would find favorable? Because it's a bunch of money,
Yeah.
and they're using it
Well, Matt's not going to get it unelected. He doesn't even really need it in a certain sense. Joni wasn't going to get unelected. Certainly Lindsey Graham wasn't.
Right, but it doesn't. Yeah, I guess it seems like a steep price to pay.
It depends on your perspective and how valuable something is to you.
Did you switch back to being a Republican in 2017?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think the voting, so
What was
first
I?
you were
I don't
Republican,
remember.
Republican, Independent,
Yeah.
Republican in 2017, switched to Democrat in February 2020.
Yeah.
Why
I was
did you become a
independent.
Democrat?
Why did I become a Democrat? Probably Donald Trump.
But you switched to being a Republican in 2017 after he won the first time, right?
Yeah, well, I played chess. A lot of people actually do this. They'll switch party affiliation so you can go in a primary, so you can vote in a primary.
So you switched just so you could vote against Trump in 2016?
Yeah.
Well, no.
I don't know what's it.
No,
What's it? I
Because
I don't remember.
He was
exactly.
independent, and then you switched in 2017, according to this piece. So that would have been after he was elected.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly why I did that right at that point.
So let's talk about your state giving to top
Yeah.
Republicans. So you gave pretty heavily to Christine Drazen,
I did.
Chavez DeRemer,
Yep.
Newt Bueller. Tell us about your state.
Lori's kind of like the national local thing. She's kind of like an in between there, and I really did not like Lori's opponent. I thought she was way too far left. She was ineffective, and she was an outsider. And I liked Lori. We don't agree on a lot of things, but I know that she'll take my phone call.
And do you talk to her
Yeah.
fairly regularly?
I haven't talked to her. She actually put together a dual. Her and Hulskamp, I think is her name. She's the congresswoman from Camas in
yeah.
Vancouver. They were working together on a bipartisan piece of legislation. I congratulated her on that and said, hey.
So what about Christine Drazen? I mean,
Yeah,
again, this is
Christine-
sort of that when we look at the whole picture of
Yeah.
everyone you've given to over the past decade,
Yeah.
it's over $400,000 to Republicans
Yeah.
who normally vote against environmental protections, and then I think you've given twice to Democrats, and I think the last time was in 2008.
Was that
So-
Obama?
Yes. So in the whole of it, when you're looking at your contributions to Christine Drazen, Newt Bueller, again, can you help us just reconcile your giving
Yeah.
with your desire for environmental protections?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, with Christine, so her predecessor was Rachel Pruzak was her name, right? Now, Rachel, I think, had the largest or the most absentees of anyone, right? And so we had this issue going on where Clackamas County wanted to build a bridge over the Willamette River where the Canby Ferry currently is. And they were going to put 7,000 cars a day over that bridge. That's what Clackamas County Transportation was saying. And they were going to put that in. It was going to feed into Stafford. It was going to feed into Willamette. And it was basically going to be a commute corridor, right? One, they were going to build it on the river without any engineering or anything. And I don't know if they even know it, but it's all mud there on it anyway. But anyway, so we were fighting this, right? We did not want this. We did not want to become Beaverton. And so we were fighting that. And I remember the first time I actually met Christine, it was at a hearing, or like a public meeting in Canby. And the Clackamas County commissioners were there, and they were giving their presentation and stuff, and we were obviously opposed to that, and we were fighting it. And you know, her predecessor as mayor, Axelrod, was on board. And you might have actually been on the city council during that.
What year was it?
It was the first time I gave to Christine. That was when they were doing the bridge over the Canby Ferry.
Anyways.
Anyway, Axelrod was. It was the last year Axelrod was mayor.
Okay.
Anyway, and she was there. She showed up. I had called Rachel Pruzak, I don't know how many times.
So Drazen showed up is what you're
She showed up, yeah, and she was there.
So is your giving to Oregon politicians, is that a similar chess game to what you're playing on the federal level, or do you see this differently? Is this a different strategy? Is this because you...
Well, I was worried about Governor Kotek being Kate Brown version 2.0.
Do you think she has been?
No, not at all. She's actually very effective.
Would you vote for Kotek?
Oh, absolutely. I voted for Kotek, even though I give Christine money.
Why? That doesn't make sense.
Why? Well, I gave
Why would you not give Kotek money if you voted for her?
I didn't think she needed money.
So why would you give to Christine?
Well, I
if you
was
wanted
not.
her?
The jury was out on me for Kotek at the time. I mean, we had just gone through the accidental governor, and I was like, oh gosh, are we going to get another version of this? I mean, I don't even know if Kate Brown even gave any.
But you still voted for Kotek?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask this question. What do you think makes you a Democrat?
My environmental stuff.
Where are you on choice?
What's that?
Where are you on choice?
Oh, I'm pro-choice. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
because Chavez DeRemer is not, right?
Well, Lindsey Graham certainly isn't either.
Yeah, but see, that's a federal issue in the state. We have the best protections for women's choice in the country.
Okay, so that...
It's not an issue here.
So you believe you're a Democrat because of your...
Well, I know I'm
concern
a
for the
Democrat.
environment.
I'm just not a progressive. So, I mean, I was at Clinton's second inauguration. You know, I'm probably more of a Clinton Democrat than... You know, and to be honest with you, I think Bill Clinton would actually be considered a Republican nowadays.
Have you, what kind of endorsements have you received? Have you received endorsements from any unions sitting on
I haven't.
the
No, I think I was a day or a couple days before the deadline I even did it. And to be honest with you, I almost wasn't going to run.
What made you switch? What made you decide to run?
Well, I actually put a phone call into her and said, hey, you know, I'm thinking of primarying you. I just want to, you know, get an idea where you're at. I wanted to find out where she was going to be on tolls, where she was going to be on Stafford. I mean, they're going to put a big transmission line down Stafford Road, and see where she was going to be on it. And she didn't call me back, and I'm like, gosh, is she Rachel Pruzak again? And so I'm like, heck, I'm going to run. So that's what I did.
Did you get a call from Brian?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you call her cell phone?
No, I called the legislative office and left a voicemail there.
You don't recall a voicemail?
No, but I wouldn't be able to talk about the campaign in the legislature anyway.
Sure.
I'd have to refer you back to my cell phone. I can check with my staff and see if they received it.
Representative, what are one or two pieces of legislation that you have helped champion that you had to fight against resistance either within your own party or across the aisle to get these past the post?
My own personal bills or
Yeah, let's do your own personal bills.
Well, this session I introduced two, we each get two bills in a short session because it's so compacted. But it's, the first one was to put a person on the OLCC that has a public health lens, especially when I thought it would be a nice piece to go along with the work we were doing on Measure 110, fixing 110. So just having somebody there, I didn't even really specify it. It was very, 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 small bill. And the lobby came out and fought it really hard at the last minute, and it lost support and it died in committee. But the second bill I had,
Sorry, the OLCC one
the
died?
OLCC one died, yeah.
How
Okay,
did
so that was
lobby
not
against it?
successful.
What's
bill.
that?
Why they lobby against it because they didn't want public health?
A lot of Republicans had different, and the Democrat that did not join on the bill had different reasons, but I know that the lobbyists were out those last couple of days before it was supposed to have a hearing, working very hard. So it went down. I'm gonna try and bring that back, maybe this time with a youth public health lens, so somebody who's a pediatrician or works with kids or is familiar with prevention and substance use disorder amongst minors. We'll see how that goes.
What's a successful bill you've passed?
So my successful bill in the short session was the CHIPS Child Care Fund bill. So this I worked very closely with Family Forward. It's, you guys know, we have a child care desert in Oregon. We're one of the worst in the nation. And there's a lot of work to be done, especially coming out of the pandemic and people, having, trying to get back to work, and it's difficult, right? Because if you can't find somebody to watch your kids, it's very difficult to work. And I know that for sure. I've experienced both times where I've stayed home with the kids and worked full time, and it's very challenging if your kid is sick or you have to work late. I mean, everybody knows. It's just a really challenging system. And not all childcare, childcare isn't a one-size-fits-all, so we need to have different types of childcare. Anyway, so Family Forward, this is their mission, their work, and they're brilliant people, came to me and said, we really want to work with you on semiconductor money from the CHIPS and Science Act at the federal level is coming into Portland, and it's coming into Oregon now, and there are mandates in that legislation about providing childcare. I believe if you accept $150 million in federal dollars or above, you have to have it. If it's less, they strongly encourage that you have it, but it also puts your application towards the top of the pile, so there's incentive there. So this was the perfect time to do it. So we did create a fund through BOLI and Business Oregon to provide, we asked for $5 million, I think got pretty close, I think it's $3.5 million, to fund childcare positions in association with construction of new fabs or buildings that are related to semiconductors.
Got it.
So it will first go to construction workers, and they can choose any type of childcare that works for them. So there's that variety, because sometimes they have to be at work at 4 or 5 in the morning. And then those newly created slots will still be there when the construction movers move on, so that people that work locally can fill those slots with kids.
So you both are against tolling, so I'll pose this question to
Okay.
both of you. The state has big ambitions for transportation projects.
Absolutely.
How do we fund those without tolling?
That's right. And that's the big question. How do we raise revenue to fund transportation in the state of Oregon?
I thought the governor was working on a package right now, and it included a gas tax increase.
There's a local gas tax increase.
So, yeah, the 2025 transportation package is in discussion now. And there's going to be a road tour, and you'd be interested in this. They're doing a road show around the state, but they're not coming to Clackamas County.
I wonder why.
I don't know. They're going to Multnomah and to Washington, but not to Clackamas.
Well, they're talking about
You mean to
26
talk
and
about
26.
this stuff? Just to talk about this stuff, or
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, I don't know the reason why, I won't speculate why, but we're not on the list at the moment.
So my understanding is that, gas taxes, sure, they can raise some decent revenue, but one, as we become more electric, gas tax, I mean, that's always the problem, right?
I've driven an electric car for 11 years.
Right, we're buying less gas and we're paying less parking fees, at least this is Portland centric. But, so again, back to that question of how do we raise revenue? I mean,
Right.
what's your,
Well, I think I wish there was more transparency in how we're currently raising revenue for transportation. ODOT is a $7 billion agency, yet it's going broke, right?
so more transparency around how they're raising money,
how
or
they're raising
spending it?
revenue and where it's being spent.
What do you think is not transparent about that? Like, where do you think they might be? What pot of funding that they get are you like, I don't know where that comes from?
Well, just sitting in meetings with them over the last 6 years, it feels a little bit like a shell game sometimes when you're talking about them, like, oh, it's going to be this many billion, and oh no, it'll only be this, and well, we haven't figured that out yet, and we'll give you the answer when the NEPA study comes back, and that's the type of conversations we have. And the truth may be is that they don't have the number, and I would rather have them say that to me. They're asking the legislature to solve a funding problem, a revenue problem, but they won't tell us how much they need. So anybody knows that you can't solve a problem if you don't know what the goal is, right? So I would like to see more transparency in what if they're gonna come back and say we need $250 billion, well, at least we know what the number is, and then we can start figuring it out.
So you don't think they're being transparent about how much they need, or?
Yeah, I think they're holding their cards close to their chest, in my opinion. I am vice chair of the revenue committee, so I would like to talk to the chair and see if we can have our own revenue department, or the legislative revenue office go in. It's headed by Chris Alanak, who's brilliant, and go in and do an audit and come back and present to the revenue committee. Here's how they collect. Here's where it's spent.
So
Here's
you're
the
working
shortfall.
on
Yes.
doing a financial audit of ODOT.
And yes, and not only that, but how are other states doing it? Is every state around the nation suffering the way we are? Is it because we don't have a variety of revenue streams as a state in general that other states might have? Not saying that we have to do that, but just sort of matching us against other states that have similar size.
And are you actively seeking funding for a financial audit, or where are
I'm
you
in
that process?
Conversations
Okay.
right now.
Okay. With the vice chair. Who's the vice chair?
I'm the vice chair.
Okay.
Along with Rep. Reschke, and the chair, and this is on the House side, is Representative Nathanson.
Got it.
So I will be speaking with Representative Nathanson, but I've been talking to partners,
Got it. Okay,
reps
okay.
in the metro area.
Brian, same question to you. What do we do about the money problem?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, I'm not necessarily opposed to tolling if it goes for a very specific project. So say the Abernathy Bridge, which it's 2 lanes, 3 lanes. It's a really kind of a convoluted thing, right? I just don't believe that should be there for perpetuity. And I also, so they're talking about, so it's not only just I-205 and I-5. I've heard recently that there's talk about 217 and Highway 26. And, if you look at the East Coast and how they implement these things, one of the things that's being talked about is basically time of use charges, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to hurt people that actually work, that can't do it, that can't afford this stuff. And we're going to pay for, ODOT for the state? Are they going to build a highway in Burns on the backs of the working class in Tualatin or Beaverton or Westland or Oregon City? I mean, that doesn't seem like a good, fair way.
So you would support tolling if it were to go
Project
to specific
related
projects?
Yes, like the Columbia River crossing. I mean, I think it was literally $4 billion originally, and now it's $9 billion or whatever. It has to be paid somehow, right? We're going to get some federal funds, and but it's going to have to be paid by Washington and Oregon and some Fed dollars, and the tolls can go for that, and I believe that, But once it's paid off, it shouldn't be there 60 years from now. I don't believe, because once you implement, so say they call it time of use. I don't know what the name of that's actually used. So basically, congestion pricing. Right, so when it's highly congested, and they have this on the East Coast, like if you go into Washington, D.C., if you come in from Virginia, sometimes that's $40. And they'll show it up there. And if you have to get to work and it's congested, and I'm not saying that Oregon's gonna be $40. I mean, that's Washington DC. But it's gonna be a variable amount. And then your private contract, I just don't see that as a good way of
Sure,
doing it.
sure.
Obviously, we have to find funding to do things. I mean, I-205, I mean, I was a kid when they were building it. I remember that.
So do you have any ideas for where to get that revenue from, or?
Well, having driven an electric car, not paying gas tax, I would say that we're probably a good source of it. Yeah, and that would have to do with like mileage tax or something like that. The problem with mileage taxes or a mechanism in that regard is that you get hit once. And not everyone can just do that. That's why kind of incremental, and that's why I think tolling is a little bit more appealing to some people in that regard. And that's why gas tax is,
Sorry, we're running a little short on time, so we're gonna move on, but
Okay.
yeah. I think your point came across well on that. I'd like for you each to take like 45 seconds to a minute to just think about one question you'd like to ask your opponent. Whether it's about a policy stance, I mean, it can really be about anything. If you have a question right off the top of your head, great. If you guys want to take 45 seconds to a minute, go ahead and do that. But
I have a question.
sure, go for it.
It's like, how committed are you?
How committed am I at what?
Committed to doing the right things for our district. I mean, Rachel was a non-entity. She was terrible. And she was like non-existent. I felt like I didn't have a rep for a long time. And I was getting that feeling from you. And I'm like, are you in this? Are you going to? Because I know I would be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel committed. I've donated my my time and energy to being a public official now for 6 years. As a city councilor, I made $3,000 a year. As mayor of West Lynn, I was paid $8,000 a year. And now I make $17 an hour. So I'm very committed. I make less than
That's
the
minimum
kids.
wage.
That's less than kids at Killer Burger make, right? So you have to be dedicated to do this work. And that's why I show up and I do the work.
Okay, any questions from me?
I don't know, I hadn't really thought of one. So you say your biggest concern is tolling, is that right?
It's one of my biggest concern. Yeah, I'd say my biggest concern is not necessarily tolling. It's the overall aggregate cost on people who just can't afford it. And tolling is the elephant in the room with regards to that. I just look at my mom. She's 81 on Social Security, and tolling is like her doctor's in Oregon City. You said that. I mean, we look at the Abernathy Bridge like driving across 10th Street. So my biggest concern is the aggregate inflation that we cause on people who can't afford it.
So do you have a solution then? I mean, considering where we are right now with tolling, and it was a pretty heavy lift to get a pause and then a shelving on tolling.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. I mean, the governor's a strong person, and this plan has been in the works for a long time, long before I was in the legislature. It was a very heavy lift. What would your plan be for funding revenue in the future? For revenue for transportation in the future?
I would say mileage taxes, and you can do that via maybe it's your electric bill, maybe it's your tires, things like that. And so like I have an electric car, and I know exactly how much it costs me because it calculates that, and that's easy to download. And we could see how many kilowatt hours you use, and that would be a method to do it. And then tires. I mean, electric car goes through tires really quickly. So
What kind do you have?
Tesla. So.
Yeah, the tire thing crossed my mind too. I don't know what the tax is on tires, but there's other inputs you could tax besides gas in a car.
Yeah, and electric vehicles absolutely go through tires a lot
Because
faster.
of the torque?
No, well, that and the weight. Yeah, they're extremely heavy. I mean, they're almost as much as a pickup truck.
All right, so our last question is always a fun question, which is, sometimes not very fun, sometimes very fun. I think this one is fun. And we'll go one at a time. What actor or actress would play you in a biopic of your life?
Oh my God, I'm gonna let Brian go first.
Okay.
I think about it. Put you on the spot.
Kevin Costner, probably, because my favorite movie is Dances with Wolves.
Okay.
I still can't think of it.
I'd say Ed Norton. Because I
Oh,
love
for
Ed
you?
Norton.
I was like, for me?
No, not for you. For me, my God, come on.
I was like, God, I look that bad.
Oh.
I don't know. I think, oh my gosh, I'm sure my kids would have an answer right away. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on it.
Okay.
Definitely
I'll
not,
think about it.
definitely not something you want to ask your kids about.
No,
Memory
you're
will be
probably
humbling.
right. You're probably
Yeah, it would be, you know, Steve Martin maybe in The Jerk or something.
I could see the white hair a little bit.
Steve Martin's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I love Steve Martin, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both.
Thank
we
you.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it. When's our endorsement issue coming out?
That's a good question. Soon.
Soon.
We're doing these interviews in the next 3 weeks.